I am being watched. Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Person of Interest, Season 3, Episode 13. It's called 4C. So spoilers for the episode. First things first. They had the opening thing back, right? Carter's not there anymore, sadly, right? But we went like 3 or 4 episodes with no intro to the show, and I thought that was going to be the status quo going forward, but they brought it back, which is maybe an indication that we are going to have more normal episodes, because we've had this big chunk in the middle of the season that's been super serialized and paying off all these big things, character deaths. It's all been like hitting really hard for the last several episodes. And I guess part of that came with a concern that maybe, it'll feel like a come down when we go to like more normal stuff again for a while. But I'm happy to say that this episode is excellent. This episode is a super fun concept. It kind of feels different to both what we've just had recently, but also what the typical premise of the show is, because it still evolves it in some way. The realization, like halfway or so through this episode, that the number that we're dealing with is relevant and not irrelevant is such a big deal when you think of what the whole premise of the show is from the start, from episode 1, and that why have they got a relevant number? And technically, it's not even they; it's just Reese. So we'll get into all that, but this was an excellent episode. I'm excited to talk about it. I watched it twice, and the reason why I watched it twice is not because I felt like I need to. It's not even because I thought it was great, although it was great, and I was happy to watch it the second time. It's because I watched it a week ago, because it's been a little while since the last review, and I was salivating about getting back to Person of Interest. I was not happy that I'd missed a few weeks, and I was determined to get one done last week, and I tried to force it. I watched the episode, loved it, and then just did not have the time to record. Like I was sleepy or whatever afterwards, and then I just didn't have time. And once a couple of days have passed, it's like, okay, we're in rewatch territory now, so I can talk about it properly. So here we are, finally back with the show, and it's a great episode. And the season's really been hitting out banger after banger, and doing different things with them as well, which is super impressive. I love a bottle episode of a TV show when it's done well, and by that I mean an episode that's set primarily in one location. And an airplane is typically a very common type of bottle story, either in a TV episode or a movie, where you're largely, maybe you'll have some scenes with other characters elsewhere, and we do that here. We see Finch and Shaw do a couple of things, but we're primarily on a plane. And what I loved about the opening of this episode is that it's just Reese in the airport. We know he's leaving. We know he doesn't want to be part of the team anymore. He's on his way. And this is ultimately going to be the story about why he's inspired to change his mind and come back. All right. This episode is the refusal of the call almost entirely. Literally as well. He literally refuses, like, he throws away his phone early because he doesn't want to get any calls. He's refusing that literal call, but he's also just, refusing the call, the hero's journey. So as soon as this episode starts and he's in the airport and he gets he hears the notification over the system saying, oh, this flight's having some problems, blah, 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 blah. If you've not been assigned a seat yet, go and check with the desk. And he goes to check, and of course the employee's checking the information and saying, oh, the flight's been delayed or cancelled, or this one's fully booked. And the computer's even, the system's down for a minute, and then she's saying, oh, oh no, here it is. Here's one for you. You can go on this flight. It's got a stopover in Rome. It's first class. Blah blah blah. Even as this first little bit of the episode was playing out, I think not even the desk. I think the second he looks down at his phone, I think it is, and sees that his flight's been cancelled or whatever the message was, I got excited because immediately I went, "This is the machine. This is not an accident. This is the machine's doing." And then all the stuff at the desk with the employee helping him with her saying the system's down for a bit. Oh, and here's a flight for you. It felt like the machine was pushing Reese onto a particular plane with a purpose. And I don't know if it's just because the show has trained me to feel this way, but I am very excited anytime it feels like the machine is making choices on its own. For whatever reason, because it's proving that the machine has a conscience and cares, because whatever, I don't know, but and Reese possibly suspects this even at this point. I think later on he has a dramatic moment before the ad break where he's like, then who sent me on this plane? And, we get the whole da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na, right? But he he takes a SIM card out of his phone, he throws it in the trash before he gets on the plane. He does not want to be contacted. But of course, the machine keeps finding ways to get to him. In particular, the phone of the guy sitting over the aisle who Reese actually knocked out for being a dick to the air hostess. But I love that element of it, and the idea that he's been put here for a reason, even though he doesn't want to accept any more jobs. And he even says that to Finch when he does kind of at least get a little bit aware of the situation, and he calls Finch. He says, I don't want this job. I'm not doing it. I'll tell the air marshal what's going on, and then it's his problem. I'm taking no part of it. But of course, things keep happening. He very quickly has to intervene to stop someone from being killed, and so on and so on. So yeah, the gist of this episode is that two air marshals are transporting this sort of dweeby nerdy guy who's in seat 4C, hence the title of the episode. And that's all the information Reese gets. He gets a message on this guy's phone saying 4C, and he looks at 4C, sees the guy, and doesn't know what's going on. He goes up and like has a quick look, and he sees the US Marshals, and it goes from there. But it turns out everyone is trying to kill this guy. You know, at first Reese thinks he's trying to escape or something, or whatever. But no, like, this is an assassination attempt, and there's multiple assassins on the plane coming for him, which again is a super fun concept, that there's just multiple people who keep coming for him, and Reese keeps having to bail him out. Plus, we also have the important character part of the episode, which is, you know, Reese ultimately feeling some level of satisfaction from helping someone again, and helping this entire plane, and I think specifically there's a character that's introduced, a new potential love interest for Reese. Was it Holly? Was her name? I think. Yeah, Holly. Who works on the plane, and she, like, right away she's nice to him, and he's nice to her, and I actually thought they were setting me up for a swerve. I think the first time I watched it, there's one little scene where she's like shaking when she's trying to make a drink. And I thought that was setting up the reveal that later on she was going to turn out to be a bad guy, and that she was nervous because she was going to do something extreme. That wasn't the case, though. Turns out she was just a delightful human being who, you know, basically through needing help and needing saved and being a good person. And I think, you know, it's really important that when her and John first start talking early in the episode, she basically complains that this job has taught her that people are trash, that she hates them, that like there's so many assholes that come on the flight. She complains that even the pilots and the people she works with all call her sweetheart and Dolly and speak down to her. Like, it's kind of made her lose her faith in humanity. And it's almost like a more mundane version of what Reese is going through, where he's kind of lost faith in humanity. Or specifically maybe more that he's lost faith in the machine, but like, there's definitely some parallels between how she's feeling about her job, but she's good at it anyway, right? That's the big thing of this episode, is that she's actually very good at speaking to people. She's good at, like, helping Reese when he says, hey, can you try and keep everyone calm, give them decaf, make sure they're all in their seatbelts, blankets on, blah, blah, blah. And she's very good at following those instructions and sort of managing the people around her. And Reese compliments that she's good at it. So when she in return starts prodding him, because she doesn't really quite buy, because he claims when stuff actually starts going down, he has like the US Marshals badge, and or the Air Marshals badge, and he says, hey, like, I'm from the International Department of Homeland Security. It was some made up like combination of things. And she kind of like questions it, but she seems to like trust him enough that she goes along with it. And when she kind of prods about this later and clearly doesn't believe that that's really what he is, he says he helps people. But I mean, he doesn't even say that the first time. I think the first time he says that he quit his job. He's not employed anymore. But eventually he does say he helps people. That's like right towards the end of the episode. Like, he's not even willing to say that until he's went through his journey on this story. And there's so many like facets to this that I love. I love that not only do we have like different criminals and terrorists trying to kill this guy, and Reese has to fight them and whatnot, but eventually there's an agent that's been sent by I can't remember what they call them, but you know, from Hershey's camp, you know, the official legitimate number getters, right? There's a guy there sent to kill him from that camp, because once we find out it's a legitimate number, it makes sense that the people who get the legitimate numbers might also be here. And turns out, like, this guy is wearing a suit. He's dressed like Reese. He has short hair. He has the suit with no tie. Like, he very much has that appearance to him, and they draw attention to it. And there's a point in this episode later on when it feels like Reese is fighting himself. Like, he's fighting, like, what he was and this idea that he doesn't want to be it again. And there's great little things that come out of this, specifically when he does feel the need that he has to call Finch, he has to get some more information about this. He's not happy he's been put here. Finch has no idea why he's there. Finch had nothing to do with this. It was all the machine. But there's a great section where Reese starts complaining to this, like, the victim, the target, who turns out, like, they do a whole thing where he's part of he's just a programmer for this, like, black market drug thing on the dark web. But then it turns out he is the man who built it. He is the main guy. He's the Sphinx. That's his code name. He did all this. But he built this system, this, like, eBay for narcotics, I think, as Finch put it. And he claims that he cut down on drug-related crime by 50% by building this system that let people do it in this safer way, where it wasn't this, street corner violence thing. He turned it into more of a business, and he feels quite proud that he cut down on the violence side of this whole operation, and that he's made the world better. And when Reese kind of, like, snaps at him, he's like, well, it doesn't look like the violence has went away, because, like, by this point in the episode, like, 5 people have tried to kill him. But he looks him right in the eye, and Finch is listening to this conversation, and he says, you computer people build these incredible things, and when it backfires, you're not ready to take the responsibility. And, like, the guy even kind of jokes that, like, hey, I don't feel like you're mad at me right now. It sounds like you're mad at someone else. But he kind of lets out some of his feelings about the machine and about, like, how he feels right now about Finch. And, like, Finch, his accountability that specifically because the machine didn't save Carter in time, but obviously he's very disillusioned about the whole process in general right now. This idea that there's still violence, right? They've not eradicated anything, and it's making Reese feel like they've not accomplished anything. Whereas I think the purpose of this episode, and this makes me think of like a lot of good Superman stories, even, or superheroes in general, but Superman's the one that came to mind, where sometimes he can get disillusioned because he can't save everyone, right? He can't be everywhere all the time. He can't save everyone who's in need. But the point is the people that he has saved, that he's there to give people hope, that you can save as many as you can. You can save everyone you can, and that's all that's important. You can't beat yourself up that you can't completely eradicate everything. You can't completely change the world in one fell swoop. So I think that's part of, like, what Reese goes through here, and part of the ending, which is not only that he has saved the plane full of people, because there's a lot of, like, back and forth as to why the number's relevant, like, because they think it's this guy, this Sphinx guy, who is he's relevant to national security in some way, and that's why it's a relevant number. And they go through the process of trying to deduce that. Shaw even goes to her old employers and even goes to meet Hirsch. Not a planned meeting. She drugs him and then gets him to talk about why this guy's important. But ultimately, the reason why it was a relevant number is because some of the criminals that were there to kill this guy had the orders to kill him no matter what. And that means if all else fails, take out the entire plane. So we get, like, it turns out, like, the other guy working on the plane is a secretly from the cartel or whatever, and he breaks into the cockpit. He kills one of the pilots, both pilots maybe even, and he's taken over the plane. It's going to be a full on, like, terrorist style attack, and that's why it's relevant. And it's. I love kind of a couple of things about this, mainly just this idea that, okay, our character's got a relevant number. Reese got the relevant number technically, but why this one? Well, did the machine understand that everyone's priority, or the relevant people's priority, would be to purely kill this guy and take him out? And therefore, the machine knows it needs someone good to actually save everyone on the plane, because they don't care about everyone on the plane. Or honestly, it doesn't even feel like they know who's They don't even seem to know that that's a possibility, that they're going to try and take down the whole plane. It feels like the machine deduced that this wouldn't be adequate, and that someone from Team Machine was necessary on that flight to take care of the situation. And then I wonder if you can take it even a step beyond that and say, does the machine know that Reese needs this? Is the machine trying to help Reese through what he's going through by giving him a situation where he is going to be like just complete, not even just useful, but like just indispensable in the situation, that he was needed here, and give him that sense of purpose once more. I mean, what have we been talking about since the very start of the show is the idea that Reese had lost purpose and Finch gave him that purpose. Is this the machine reaching out and making sure that Reese feels that purpose once more because he's been shaken, by recent events? I love that idea of the machine thinking a little bit more beyond just the hard logic and more about having sympathy and an understanding of the people that it's dealing with. It's definitely fun to think about, and how true that is something maybe we'll sort of explore a bit over time. But certainly, there's definitely evidence to suggest that it does care beyond just the logic. But I think these realizations, him having these conversations with Holly, where she's impressed by him and feels protected by him, and even the annoying criminal guy at the end when he sneaks him out of the airport through the suitcase, he offers him tons of money to repay him for saving him, and Reese is like, I don't do it for the money. And the guy just like is kind of gobsmacked by that and says, well, thank you. Thank you for saving me. And he leaves. And it's a really sort of genuine moment from a character who's been kind of whiny and annoying. Like, not to the point where he's like super annoying to watch, but just like you can tell that he's pissing Reese off. And like he's got that kind of vibe about him. And I think him giving this genuine thank you at the end on top of everything else, and then saving that one good person in Holly. Like there's kind of like a three-tiered thing here. There's the saving the target, who's kind of annoying but does give a genuine thank you. There's being there to save Holly, who would have died in a plane incident had he not been there, who he genuinely seems to like and maybe even has an attraction to, and it seems to be a good person. I think that's the important part. It's not just that he's into her, right? I'm not saying he feels good for saving her because he thinks she's hot. He feels good for saving her because, or I should say, he's attracted to her for the same reason that he feels good for saving her, is that she seems to be a genuinely good human being that like he can feel good about keeping in the world. And then on top of that, you've got the entire plane full of passengers. I mean, it's what Reese himself says at the end. Like, the only relevant number here was 140 passengers or whatever it is. Reese even phrases that today, because there's a whole big bit at the end where Finch has to remotely fly the plane to land it. And they did they set this up last season, that Finch knows how to fly at least little planes. He's never done like a jet before, but someone's got to do it. And he's got like his computer flight control sticks and all that out, and he goes to fly the plane. It's a really good little tense sequence where you've got Finch trying to land the plane remotely as Reese is fighting with the last bad guy. But I really like, it's a lot of fun because it's good old fashioned, like, can someone who's not that trained for it actually land the plane and save everyone? It's a good bit of tension. It always is, right? It's a classic for a reason. The moment where Reese like holds the phone out and says, "That's for you, Finch," as everyone's like cheering, because the passengers are clapping and they're happy that they've landed, and it was kind of a bumpy landing, understandably. They don't even know the extent of the danger they were in. In fact, if there's even like if you want to nitpick the episode, and it's fair to nitpick this, I don't think it gets in the way of enjoying it, but yeah, I mean, they even sort of play it as a joke, like just how much Reese is getting into fights around like people in the plane, and they're just either asleep or paying attention to the movie or whatever, right? But people just keep not noticing or being aware that anything's happening. There's a lot of that, right? And you just kind of like accept it as a bit of fun hijinks almost but not hijinks, just for the relevant. But there is maybe a point later on when Reese has to break into the cockpit to get to the bad guy, and he like rams the door with the cart, and it's quite loud, and the passengers do seem to notice it, and then Holly tries to cover for it by saying, "Hey, we're having some turbulence, blah 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 blah." I feel like the passengers on a plane would notice that enough to start freaking out a bit more. I'm not saying they should even do anything about it, but they do seem still oddly calm. despite the fact that some big dude has just rammed the cockpit door with a cart to break into it. I mean, even if they can't quite see it correctly, like, it's maybe like just a little bit on the edge of suspension of disbelief, but I think ultimately it's not a big deal because so much of what the episode is doing is both fun, like, you know, Reese constantly intercepting these different assassins. Some try to suffocate him, some try to stab him with a syringe or strangle him. Like, there's a whole variety. Like, and they do fun things like, you know, at the start of the episode, Reese is asked to move seat because there's some newlyweds who want to sit together, and he agrees to move his seat. And it turns out those newlyweds are actually two of the assassins later on. And just fun stuff like that. It feels very playful in its mechanics, despite the fact that where the main character is in the story is in a, you know, a bit of a gutter. Effectively, like, he's disillusioned, he doesn't want to help, he keeps trying to resist it. Like I said, he's refusing to answer the call at every single step, but he can't help but step in when the air marshals just spectacularly fail to like take care of the guy. You know, one's already knocked out in the bathroom, and then the other one just kind of like passes out from being drugged. So yeah, there's some fun interaction with Reese and him. He's got like an electrocution built on that Reese abuses a little bit, which is funny. Holly steps in and hits one of the bad guys at one point, which again is just these little things to restore Reese's faith in humanity. That core character story gives this episode its weight, but then everything in the plot is just a lot of fun. It's a really great mix of elements, and like I said to start with, the idea that the machine isn't even giving a number out, it's just reaching out to Reese directly, making sure he's in the right place, and giving them effectively a relevant number. And maybe that, I mean, hell, maybe in a sense, like, that's why it didn't send a number to Finch. Like, I mean, yeah, let's think about that. Why didn't the machine also send a number to Finch so that Finch was aware about it in advance? Is it because technically the relevancy of this is that it's like 140 numbers? Maybe not all of whom are, I mean, admittedly, we've seen it handle non-US citizens before with whatever the equivalent number is, but that was like an immigrant number, though. I do love the idea. Like, I hope we get an episode where they get a national insurance number, which is the UK's equivalent to Social Security, and it has letters in it. So I love the idea of, like, Finch being confused for a minute until he realizes that it's a UK number. But anyway, like, maybe that's why there's just too many numbers. But then we've also seen the machine give out lots of numbers before. Remember when like the mob war was potentially going to happen a little bit earlier in the season, and they got like 30 something numbers. So that there is some precedent for that. But again, going back to that idea, is the machine intentionally not sending it to Finch first because it wants Reese to reach out to Finch? It wants to try and help repair that relationship. Like, I love thinking about that. I love thinking about the intentions of the machine. It's this great, like, thing that hangs over all the episodes, and I mean that in a good way. Like, it's not like a shadow over everything. It's a light over everything that makes you think about what's going on in a way that you wouldn't otherwise think about. At the end of the episode, Reese does go for a drink with Holly, and she says, if you're ever back in the city, come, you know, because obviously she lives back in New York, and he notices Finch sitting over on a table. I will say, I mean, it wasn't too bad until the very final shot, but there was obviously some green screen trickery here to make it look like they were in a city, or they were in, you know, in Rome. Right? They had like a, you know, a little bit of a street that they were using, and they were lighting it in differently to try and make it feel like it was Italy, but there was like a clear green screen separation where the rest of the road was going, and it, you know, it was a little bit distracting, but not a great deal. I think I loved this little conversation. It almost got me a little teary-eyed having them make up like this, where Finch, having heard everything we said earlier in the episode, kind of like says, hey, I know you don't feel great about the machine right now, but the opacity of the machine, I think was the phrase he used, but you know, I had the machine designed that way for a reason. Like, I didn't want it making the decisions. I wanted there to be a human element actually deciding something as important as like someone's fate, right? The machine just gives us numbers so that human beings who have free will can make the decisions about what to do with that information, and that's an important part of the step. And I love that, one, because I think it does make sense, and it's a very human thing for him to say, and you know, I think Reese does understand it. And he says, hey, it comes with great responsibility. Now, calm down, Uncle Ben. But he also says it sometimes comes with cost, right? and Carter ultimately, it maybe is that cost. And that he misses her too. So, and, Reese kind of responds saying that he can't go with them to this museum that Finch wants to go to because he thought he'd get fitted for a new suit. And I love that that's how he announced that he'd made his decision to come back, is that I want a new suit. I need to get back in my superhero outfit so I can go back to saving people. In fact, he even says the line, I need to get back to work. Because I think on some level he realizes what that work does for him. Just like at the start of the show, where it gave him this sense of purpose, and it brought him out of the life that he was in, where he was homeless and all these other things. I think the feeling that Reese has had, for the last several episodes, like he thinks that the idea of that sense of purpose is gone. He thinks he couldn't get it back. In the same way that he didn't think he could get it back when he got disillusioned with his life in the military and how that kind of ultimately betrayed him and it wasn't what he thought it was. Helping Holly, helping the passengers on the plane, even helping the Sphinx. I think it reminded him that if he keeps working, it helps. If he helps people, it helps him. Which makes you like the character even more, because it's this good-natured thing that, he ultimately is at his best because he feels fulfilled doing good things and helping people and being a hero, effectively. So it makes you want to root for him more. The reaction, Michael Emerson, like his performance here, the reaction to the "I need a new suit" line, is great. Like it's like a moment of just like relief in his eyes, but he doesn't want to give it away too much. It's really well handled. So yeah, the episode ends with them going off to get him a suit, and Reese asking if he can hitch a ride back to the city with him. So yeah. Really, really good stuff. I like, it was heartwarming at the end. It was a great tale of Reese kind of coming back to what he is. And we all knew we were going to get this story. There was no way that Reese was going to be off doing his own thing until the end of the show. Like, he was always going to come back and be the man in the suit again. And sometimes some of the most satisfying stories in comic books, again, to compare it to superhero stuff, is the story of when they sort of like lose faith in what they're doing and they want to give it up. Spider-Man no more, the Spider-Man outfit in the trash as he walks away before he's inspired to finally pick it back up again. There's been Superman stories where he's given it up. Like almost all of them have had a story where they give up doing what they're doing because they basically feel like they're not making enough of a difference because of one tragedy or something like that, and they have to like rekindle that fire and maybe in many ways come out stronger on the other end, where they because when they come back to it with the understanding of knowing that there can be losses, that they can't win all the time, but the difference they do make and every life they do save still matters. So I like, this friendship being mended at the end of the episode was really nice. I also think I love the little detail of Finch wanting to go to the museum because it's an artist, the displays for an artist that Grace liked. And I think the idea of bringing up Grace and how important Grace is to Finch, right as Reese has just met a new person that's maybe like rekindled his like compassion for human beings a little bit, where it's just, it's given him back some of his mojo. And the importance of like having someone that you care about to give you that kind of like first-hand perspective of why you need to save people, because if you care about one person, then you can some level care about them all, kind of thing. So yeah, really just really great stuff. I was kind of in love with this episode and its entire premise and what it was doing. And just to mention the other little bits, the Shaw going to see Hirsch was a fun scene. Her being in control and Hirsch not being able to do anything because he's drugged was funny, if nothing else. Also, this idea that the reason why the government want the Sphinx dead is because if the Sphinx starts talking about the trade and this like dark web stuff, it will actually raise some questions about how the government actually makes money from this stuff, like how the government effectively taxes the drug trade unofficially, and they don't want that getting out. So it's almost like the relevant people couldn't be trusted to take care of this because their interests were more about self-preservation than actually saving the people involved, on top of the other reasons where they might have not even occurred to them that the entire plane was at risk. And the idea that the machine made that choice to have the more reliable people step in and get something done whilst possibly also specifically doing it to try and bring Reese back, to give Reese the sense of purpose that he needs to have rekindled. I just love it all. It was lovely. It was lovely. That's a weird word to use, but everything about this was lovely. It was like a fun action movie premise, set in a plane, sneaking around people, fun interactions, a good connection with a new character that fills him with, a bit of hope for humanity again. And then that the raw character story underneath it all being this great like sense of rediscovering a purpose and coming back. And at the end of the episode, when Reese makes his choice, it didn't feel like a cheat. It felt like the episode had earned it by actually giving us like multiple examples of people being thankful that he was there to save them, even though he was reluctant the entire time for the most part, right? So, but also lends to the idea that he can't just stay away. He thinks he can. He may even pretend for a while that he can, but ultimately he couldn't help but step in and stop the guy from being killed. Yeah, I loved it. I loved the episode. It was great. Honestly, it was kind of almost a hard one to talk about because I didn't want to just like recount the entire plot, but there's so many little things sprinkled throughout, like him fighting basically himself, right? This guy who's in his suit, like he's fighting the idea that he's fighting the idea that this still isn't him, but it really is still him. Like he's not accepted that he's still the man in the suit, but like he's, I mean, actually to compare it to another Superman thing, this is literally Superman 3 when Superman gets infected with like fake green kryptonite, but it's more like red kryptonite, but it turns him into an asshole, but then eventually he splits in two, and the good Clark has to fight the bad Superman, and then ultimately wins and like like becomes Superman again. This is kind of like that almost, where Reese is, not in a literal sense, but it's symbolically he's fighting his past self ultimately to be reborn as a better version of that past self. I don't know. I'm getting a bit fancy with my comparisons here, but I'm all about it. So. Now, great stuff. Obviously, there was no Fusco, there was no Root in this episode. That is okay. This was focused, and Reese has not been getting the main attention for the last several episodes, so it was nice to come back to him and sort of give him this character story that he needed. Yeah, so I do suspect the next episode might be the most normal episode we've had in quite some time at this point, since like early season 3. Just purely because we're back to having Reese in the suit, and we're back to him being on the team. So I assume we'll get a number. That said, though, this show is very good at shaking things up and adding new layers to what it's doing. I mean, it's actually amazing to me that it took until the middle of season 3 to get a relevant number, because, going all the way back to episode 1 of the show, that was the premise, that Finch and Reese get the irrelevant numbers. But of course, storytelling 101, that means that one day they're going to get a relevant one for a reason. And this was finally it happening. And the fact that they didn't do it until the middle of season 3 makes it feel like a bigger deal. When you really stop and think about it, it feels like a huge deal that they got a relevant number. And it's this idea that it was a relevant number that was tied to an irrelevant thing, and the guy himself being killed. Like he wasn't important to everyone, but the plane going down was important. Or maybe it's the other way around. But either way, this idea that the machine, actually it goes in with what Finch was saying at the end. Like Finch says, you need the human element to make those extra decisions that can decide who's living and dying, because you need to have that human element to make those choices. I think it's kind of amazing that the machine effectively made the human choice and said, no, in order for the people on that plane to be alive, it needs to have a human being there that is going to make the choice to save them. And that's why it made sure Reese was there. Or one of the reasons why it made sure Reese was there. See, I'm still thinking about like the reasons behind everything, because I think there's so many of them, and what's great is that most of them don't even like contradict the other ones. Like they mostly all fit together in a perfect blend. The show at this point is so confident, and like it's just hitting me with great episodes, even when I think, oh, it has to be a down week this week because they've had so many good ones recently, and it's been on such a roll that I am continually impressed. And at this point, I'm just rambling, so I'm going to end the review. This has been my thoughts, person of interest, 4C, Thank you very much for joining me, everyone. You can support the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep it all coming. It's the reason why I can do this and keep all these reviews coming here, as well as the movie podcasts over MailFuzz Movies. But yeah, like, subscribe, comment below about the episode. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you next time. Have you got any vanilla?